Hey guys, welcome to Monday Mindset Mojo. It is my pleasure and my privilege to have a wonderful panel of speakers here with us this morning. We're going to be talking about communication, mastering the inner game, your inner game for outer wins. And with us on stage today, we have Tim Brown, Joey Ideas, Sean McManus, and my wonderful co-host Sheila Slick. If you think that the secret to success is about more hustle, maybe it's not. Maybe it's about thinking better. And we're going to talk about today that healthy cognition isn't loud. It's not boisterous. Healthy cognition and communication, rather than being loud, is clear. It's really strategy over scramble. It's logic over loops. And today we're going to dive into how these high performers really lead, create, and live from the inside out. It's great to see the Acadian Carpenter here. It's that guy from X, and I'd love to hear all your comments today. Just drop those in the chat. I'm going to go around robin and introduce you guys to Tim Brown. He is the founder of one of my favorite clubs on X, the Confident Speaking Club. He helps leaders to elevate their presence by clarifying their thought before their voice. Joey Ideas is here from at World Base. He's a faith-driven entrepreneur. He turned high-concept thinking into some high-ticket results and had millions in sales by the time he was 28. Sean McManus, at the Sean McManus on X, he's a fitness coach for Christian men, and I love it because he really merges biblical truth with some neuroscience-based transformation. And then, of course, you guys all know Sheila Slick. She's my co-host today. She is a leadership strategist. She's a podcast host. She just loves empowering professionals, innovators, entrepreneurs like you to lead with purpose, authenticity, and clarity. And guys, it is so great to have you here today. Thank you for joining me. And we're going to kind of go around the room. But Tim, how did you get into this confident speaking business that you're in these days?
Well, thank you for having me, and hello to everyone watching. I got into this confident speaking business and community that we do on X because I was wanting to find something I could do to make a contribution to people. For me, it's always about having an opportunity to give back. And I enjoy seeing people succeed, seeing people thrive. And I got involved on X a few years ago. My wife actually set me up an account back in 2014, and I didn't actually start using it until 2022 because I was trying to learn about crypto. And as I was spending time in different crypto spaces, learning about crypto, I realized that, you know what, there's only so much crypto I think I can handle talking about. So let me see what else is going on this platform. So I got involved in different conversations, meeting different people in different environments and different walks of life. And I realized that this was a platform that I could use to actually make a contribution of my own. And I decided, well, let me see what it is I could talk about. And speaking with my wife, she said, you know what? I think you could help people overcome their fear of public speaking. And that's what it kind of began as in the beginning. But after about 2 or 3 spaces, I decided I would like for it to be a little more than that, because how many times am I going to be able to talk about overcoming your fear? And I realized that communication overall is important for every aspect of life. So we shifted to the idea of confident speaking, so that no matter what area of life you're in, no matter what walk of life, no matter what your career pursuits are, communication is the foundation of our existence. You know, as humans, how do we interact or engage without the ability to communicate effectively? And that's what I wanted to be able to do, because I know in order for us to be successful and to maximize this life that we live, communication has to be at the foundation of it. And that's how I got into this.
Man, that's amazing. I was actually thinking about that this morning, and we'll talk more about this later, about exactly what you said, that communication really is the axis or the pivot point for everything in life. You know, when you're communicating about buying a car, whether you're communicating with a classroom full of second graders, whether you're communicating with a boss about why you deserve a raise or even why you deserve a job in the first place, or I think most importantly, when you're communicating with those that you love and care about, technique is everything. Mindset is everything. Clarity is everything. And so I look forward to a riveting conversation here. But let's go over to Sean. And Sean, share your background with us.
Man, it's great to be here with you guys. Pumped to have this discussion this morning. So fitness has been a part of my life for many years, very seriously for about over a decade now. And so in that time period, I've learned a lot. I've done some competing. I've helped some friends along the way. But I got super involved in coaching when I've seen this problem in our society today, particularly with Christian men, where we kind of live on the sidelines of life, and we don't really go after the dreams and the desires that God has put into our hearts, and we're also not really taking care of our bodies well. So as something that's very important to me, I started to teach and to train other men in their fitness and nutrition and learning how to take care of their bodies well and treating their bodies as a temple in the way that God commanded us to.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. So it's something that I thoroughly enjoy, something I do well at coaching others, and then just kind of bringing men out of their shell, bringing them into that confident version of themselves where they can lead themselves better, they can lead their families and their communities better.
Well, and why I think that's such amazing work. We had a space yesterday. Gosh, time flies. No, Saturday, with a great friend of mine, Darren, on X, and it was just a space for men. We had some ladies there, but I often run into this where we live in a time where men seem rudderless. They seem without direction. They don't know what it takes to be a healthy man. They don't know what masculinity is, and they really do seem to have lost their voice. And I think we as a society have punished men for even speaking up. Shame on you for speaking up. And it's kind of a backlash against, centuries, millennia of men domineering instead of serving. There's a difference between being a dictator and being a servant. And my slant on, manhood real quick, is that we should have a servant mentality. And so I want to go to Joey and then to Sheila, our lone lady in the space today. Sheila, thank you so much for bearing with us, hairy-chested guys. But Joey, tell us about your background, because I think it has a faith component also, as I recall.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. It's true. I grew up Catholic, but I would say that for much of my young life, I sort of got away from religion or from God. And when I went into the professional world, quickly realized, right, how difficult it is and how tough it is to get results and grow. And there was no sort of conscious effort necessarily. It just sort of naturally came, and it actually naturally came once I started writing. I found writing to be an extremely therapeutic and beneficial exercise for me, not only to develop my ideas, but to just help me think and help me bring clarity to what my problems were. And as I started writing on a daily basis, naturally, I just started to write toward to God and started to become more in touch with what I believe to be a sort of higher power. And for me, it's a great point that you make around service, because that is at the core of what I believe in, which is that the best folks in business and in life, they tend to focus on other people. They tend to focus on serving other people, and whatever product or whatever service they're providing. The most important thing to them is that people walk away smiling and happy and are grateful and appreciative of the service that they've provided. And that's the mindset that I've developed in my first decade here of being in the professional world, and now I'm in a position where the corporate world, I'm starting to get ready to move on from the corporate world and do my own thing and be a little bit more independent. And that's been a very difficult process mentally, but for whatever reason, the more I talk to God, the better and more able I seem to be to get through those tougher periods.
Yeah, me too. Me too. And I appreciate that, and I think I mean it's not really a faith-based episode, but all you guys are men of faith, and so I wanted to point that out. Is that I think that we are created in God's image, and God spoke reality as we know it into existence with a few words. He literally spoke things into being, and when you're speaking. That's exactly what you're doing, my friends. You're speaking some reality into creation. The key is becoming clear with what you're going to create. That's what Tim does in his own way, Sean, and Joey does that, but someone who does it really, really exceptionally well is my co-host, Sheila. So, Sheila, tell us about your background in case some have not met you and how you help people gain clarity in their lives as business leaders.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for having me again on your show, Dr. Heath. I come from the perspective of an entrepreneurial mindset, and I do have to agree that communication is key. No matter what you do in life, I think there's two things you really need to learn how to manage. One is your words. I learned that very early on in my career. It's not what you say a lot of times, but it's how you say it. How do you make people feel? They'll remember that as well over what it is you're saying. Can you hear me good?
You sound great. You sound
Oh,
wonderful.
okay.
Yeah,
So the other
and so
thing,
go ahead.
sorry. No, and the second one is finances, right? I learned that early on that no matter what you do, whether you have a job, a career, or a business, you really need to learn how to manage your money early on. When you're a business leader, cash is king. You want to keep your business alive, you need cash, right? That's the motor that keeps it going. And then no matter how much you make, if even if you're not an entrepreneur, it's a skill that you need to continue practicing in order to generate wealth later on in life.
You know, Sheila, where I really believe that intersects is even money management begins with communication, and the communication is clarity with yourself about the stakes that are important in your business, because your money is not necessarily going to go with your mouth is. Your money is going to go where your values are. And so if you value one thing over another, but that's a low value activity, then you're really just burning through cash. If your money goes on high value things, then you're investing cash. And so the most important type of communication that I work with clients on is communication with yourself. But I want to go back to Tim as we tackle this topic of how clarity fuels communication. So Tim, how do you teach people how to gain clarity in their mind before they speak what they think they have to say out loud?
Well, I try to help them understand the importance of your why. And why, very short word, but it's a big word with a lot of implications. And when we understand why we go in business, it's important that we do, because things will get difficult in life. And if we don't have a firm why as to what we're doing and why we're doing it, it can become very difficult to sustain during the difficult times. But as it pertains to communication, we need to understand why we're actually speaking. Are you speaking because you're trying to prove a point? Are you speaking because you see an opportunity to help someone's life in a positive way? Are you speaking because you're trying to get attention? And having an idea of why you're even opening your mouth to begin with can help shape how you choose to present yourself. It has an impact on how we present ourselves based on the why of what we're saying. And that's what I try to get people to understand and to think about. My goal isn't to put people in a position to be the most eloquent speaker in the room. It's about connection. And as Sheila mentioned a moment ago about how you make people feel. And when you're communicating, you may not be the best business on the block. You may not be the cheapest business in the industry, but if you understand why you're speaking, you can communicate effectively. And that's what I try to get people to understand and to think about. My goal isn't to put people in a position to be the most eloquent speaker in the room. It's about connection. And as Sheila mentioned a moment ago about how you make people feel. And when you're communicating, you may not be the best business on the block. You may not be the cheapest business But if you communicate well, you allow people to understand that you value them, you show them that you care, then it makes a difference, and it opens the door for them to be willing to trust you and still spend with you, even when you may not be the best or the least expensive. So having that conversation with yourself to understand the why behind what you're saying, it's the nuances and the details that I encourage people to focus on. And we're very intentional about that in the community. Just the little things that we do and activities that reinforce the thought process before they open their mouth. And when they do, how are you presenting what it is that you're sharing?
Yeah, Tim, I think that the mistake I see a lot are people that their why is simply just to make a sale, make a buck, and then go on to the next sale. So if you're a business leader, if you're a marketing or salesperson, if that's your intent, you're going to make some sales, sure. Just roll the dice, you're going to make some sales. But you're also going to lose a lot of sales because people pick up on that. So I love what Tim had to say, because if your why in your business is to make a connection, well, goodness, just think of the value of that. It's really, gosh, what was that story of, would you rather have $1 million today or a penny a day and it doubles every day? Do the math. You'll see which one works out better. So a lot of people, they just want the money now, and I would say make the connection now. Mm-hmm. And then over time, I had the weirdest thing happen last week, guys. I had a situation with a client that we had a bit of a kerfuffle at the end of our work together. It was very uncomfortable. And I thought to myself, that's the last time I'll ever see them. But you know what I did? Is I didn't respond in any kind of vengeance. I didn't respond in any kind of bitterness. I simply tried to understand where they were coming from. I apologize for any misunderstanding that might have been on, my fault. And then I wished them the best. And that was 9 or 10 years ago. And they called me up last week and said, hey, I need to make an appointment. And so if your intention is to serve yourself, you're going to lose more than you win. If your intention is to serve the other person and you communicate that, not by saying that out loud, but by saying that to yourself. One of the techniques that I discovered years ago in marketing, if you're going to make a tough phone call, practice smiling before you dial the number. And then practice smiling as you're dialing a number. And then practice smiling while you're speaking. It changes your mindset. So, because that sets intent as presenting yourself as not a threat. And so when it comes to clarity, Sean and Joey, let me go to Sean and we'll go to Joey. How do you help folks that you work with get to this clarity? And let's define it. When I say clarity, what kind of comes to your mind, Sean? What do you think about that?
When I think of clarity, the first thing that comes to my mind is just having a clear vision of where you're going and what you want to accomplish and what you want to do. So I think that's really where we need to start when we're trying to do anything of substance, is trying to figure out, like, okay, what's the end game here? What am I trying to achieve? And then from that point, once we know like exactly where we're going in that clarity piece, we can kind of backtrack and set goals to meet along the way to get us there. So when I think of clarity, I think of having a clear direction of travel, a clear direction of where we're going.
And I love that. I'm gonna come back to Sean, but let me go to Joey. And guys, the next question here on deck is, how do you know that once you gain that clarity, how do you know that you really have a idea worth sharing? How do you know if you have an idea worth selling? How do you test at those ideas? But Joey, what do you think when you hear the word clarity? And then on to that next question, how do you know if what you're believing in is even worth believing in? Because a lot of people believe in all kinds of crazy things in this world today, don't they?
Yeah, well, it's a great point, and I agree with what they both said, which is, you have to have an aim. In terms of gaining additional clarity on it and believing that it's an idea worth having, I think that, again, going back to writing, I think oftentimes we believe we have a good idea. We believe we have a good sense of what we're trying to do. And then once we start to write it down, we start to realize how underdeveloped it is. We start to realize how fragmented it is and how we don't actually know what the words are that we're looking for to fully develop the idea. So I think going through the exercise of writing it down thoroughly forces you to construct your ideas in a methodical and organized sort of way. And then I think that the best way to figure out if our ideas are worth sharing, if they're good ideas, is to study ideas, to study the best ideas that the world has ever seen. And the only way to really do that is to talk to people that are um, well, actually, you could really talk to anybody, because if you talk to people that are not doing well, you'll start to learn some of the bad ideas, and you'll know that they're bad ideas because they'll tell you what they're what's going on in their life, and they'll tell you all the bad things that are happening, and then you can start to make connections and associations with their belief systems and how those belief systems have brought them on a bad path. And then you can also talk to the people that are doing really well, and you can figure out the patterns there. But I think the way to really, really separate yourself is to read literature and read the best pieces of work that have ever been written, because as we all know, that history tends to have patterns to it. And again, this is sort of where you get your pattern recognition and your inventory of associations that you can make. And I see this often happen when I'm talking to somebody, and all of a sudden, boom, you think of something and you're like, I read about that in this book, and then about this historic event, and you have a bit of a reference point on, and well, is there any evidence that this idea is good?
Man, Joey, that is fantastic. And that is such a top level tip, because if you're thinking an idea right now, and everybody is in some way thinking of an idea, of the one, and I mean one, of the 100 billion people who've ever lived, one of 100 billion. You're one of 8 billion currently on the planet. You're one of 100 billion who have ever lived. Maybe someone else thought that same thought that you were thinking. They tested it out. They tried it out. They put some shoe leather on it, as my dad used to say. They walked around in it, and they found it did not work. So why would you keep walking around in that other people a century, a millennia, 1,000 years, 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, found out did not work? Now, I think most of us here are believers. I'm certainly a believer. And again, it's not really a faith-based space, but it comes up because this is how I live. A new way to look at the scripture is a book of things that other people did that did not work out. And these people are pointed out. There's the guy that was given a talent and he buried it. There were people that stood on the street corners trying to be seen of other people, and the cautionary tale is don't do that. That doesn't work. The point of that particular parable, I guess, or example, is do your work on yourself in private and don't make a big freaking show out of it. Why do you need to be patted on the back every time you do something that you ought to be doing anyway? Go in your closet and do your praying, and do your journaling, and do your inner work, and do your lifting. Your heavy cognitive lifting. Try it out, compare it to what other people have found worked or did not work. But, Joey, that's an amazing thing that you say, because, writing your thoughts down, I've done that for many, many decades. And I like to point out Jack Nicholson, one of the best jokers of all time in Batman, Jack Nicholson, who also played in A Few Good Men, one of my favorite movies. He has a great Instagram account. And I want to thank you guys watching us on X. We're on X currently. We're on Facebook. We're on LinkedIn. We're on live streaming through YouTube. And into my Mindset Masterclass. Go over, join my Mindset Masterclass. It is school.com/mindset. I'll put the link up in the chat. And also, if you have questions, we'll be here for the next 60 minutes. If you have a question for myself or any of these other top-level thinkers, put it in the chat. I'll put it on the screen, and we'll answer your question. Don't go away with a question lingering. Ask it. All the other, about 150 viewers we have now, probably more than that with all the platforms, probably have the same question also. But test out your thoughts, try out your thoughts, and if you find, and so write those thoughts down, because what Jack Nicholson said on his Instagram account is he said, I have ideas, I write them down, and then I wad them up and I throw them in the trash, because he thought it wasn't a good idea. And then I go in the trash and I pull them back out because it's really good stuff. See, it works both ways. You can think that an idea is crap because we're our own worst critic and it's a great idea eventually. It may not be a great idea now, but it may eventually be a great idea. Or you can have what you think is your precious, pet, most wonderful idea in the world, and that idea may be crap. Here's a top-level tip. Stop thinking that you are your ideas and your ideas are you. Another word for your ideas is hypotheses. It's just a hypothesis. It's just a maybe. It's just a could be. And so don't get so connected to them that you don't critique them, and don't get so connected to them that when you go on like a space like Simply Tim TV on X and you speak that idea and somebody criticizes it, you think they're criticizing you. They're not criticizing you. They're critiquing the idea. I had a person trolling my space on Saturday, and I actually, he got away too quick, or he would have heard this, but I said that I really appreciate him doing that, because he's doing that for free. I have never paid him anything. And this guy, free of charge, he has never sent me an invoice, will take his time that he could be eating ice cream or jelly beans or something, and he will take the time to come on my space and criticize me. I really appreciate that, because it stimulates my thinking. The next time you speak out loud and somebody criticizes, consider that. Are they really going to bill you for it? Probably not. Well, then why not view that as an opportunity to stimulate your thinking, if only about how you decide to think of critique? Sheila, what do you think? Surely you don't get a critique from anybody, do you?
I encourage it. That's called feedback, and that's how we grow. And if you really just want to get quick feedback, ask somebody to give you 3 words to describe you. What do you think about me? I do it with my clients all the time, and sometimes I'm even like, wow, I didn't expect that. So you learn from hearing others' opinion on feedback. But I do have 3 key points based on clarity, idea, and I'm sorry, as an entrepreneur, when you say idea, it's just, it makes my blood move. So with clarity, I think clarity is continuous. It's not I'm going to be clear today, and then this is the vision and the plan, moving forward, because part of that process is getting that feedback, right? You need to measure your progress with something. If it's as easy as losing weight, I have to weigh myself. And so when you get to that scale, you once again need to reevaluate and gain clarity as to what my next steps moving forward are. So clarity begins with self-awareness, right? Clarifying your values. What's important to me now? Because values change, right? Just like our situations in life change. And it's something that should be continuous, is looking for that clarity. When you say idea, number one, an idea is just an idea, and I don't think there's any bad ideas. And some don't, they don't become anything unless you take action. So what you're doing, whether from the scientific point of view by putting it as a hypothesis or as an idea for a business, it's something that needs to get validated or tested. If you're a startup, for example, you want to try and get those users for your, product within 30 days. You want it to fail fast if it's a bad idea, but then it just means that you could tweak it and try it out again. And a lot of ideas that perhaps we may think are bad could end up being someone else's good idea. And I'll give you a perfect example for all of you on X. I don't know how many of you know about Vine or you were in the platform when Vine was around. Well, maybe Vine, it was the same idea as TikTok. It was just maybe a decade out of its time. It was just too much to have all this live video.
I
Right?
did not know that,
So,
Sheila. I did not know that Vine was like TikTok.
yes, it was just little videos going up and down a feed. And then they had Periscope, which was live video sharing your location. I mean, what could go wrong? But in the end, 10 years later, we're here on live video. People are sharing their locations, and it was just a different time and perhaps context. So those were my three key points, right? Clarity should be continuous. Don't think that you're clear on what you want today, whether it be in business or in life. Make sure that you keep reevaluating yourself. Ask yourself some questions, reflect, whatever works for you to try and get those thoughts out of your head in a paper or
Hmm.
into action so they don't stay stuck. And that's pretty much my 3 points.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So as you're speaking, I'm kind of building a kind of a guided imager thing in my head. I would recommend to you guys. So when you're having an idea, instead of looking at it as a finished piece of art, which very few ideas are. I don't know of anybody, an inventor, that would say, I had a great idea. I popped it out and it was perfect from minute number one, second number one. It was perfect from the moment of creation. And so view your ideas as a bit of a hunk of marble. And then when you're critiquing your own ideas, you're really chiseling it into a better form. When others are critiquing your idea, what they're doing is they're offering you a chisel that you can choose to use or not. But what people with a weak mindset do is, if Tim comes up to my beautiful, lovely hunk of marble and says, "Hey, Dr. Heath, I brought you a chisel." I don't need that stinking chisel. And then I turn down Sean's and Joey's and Sheila's. Well, again, even somebody trolling, you're turning down an opportunity to consider. Just consider. So that there's a name for that, and that word is ignorance. Ignorance is not a bad word. It simply means absence of knowledge. Now, stupidity is a different thing, right? But ignorance is an absence of knowledge. Why would you think, when you're speaking, you're sharing an idea, you're sharing the next best innovation, and someone hands you a chisel, what they're really doing is saying, might this help your idea? That's how I hear it. Might this critique help your idea? Now, whether they're saying that or not, I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. I got 2 PhDs in this crap, and I'm not psychic. So that's how I choose to think. Because if I can choose to think in a way that is healthier for me or unhealthy for me, why would I choose the unhealthy way? If you come up and you say, "Hey man, I think you got termites. Should I boot you out of the house?" How dare you say that there's termites in my wall that I can't see? Well, maybe there's not, but maybe I can view that as an opportunity to check and see if there are termites in the walls of my house. So no, friends. Ignorance, absence of knowledge is not golden. Absence of knowledge could be bliss, but only short-lived bliss. All that crap goes away. You may feel really, really good in the moment. Man, old Tim was criticized, and I shut that guy down. and Joey was criticized, and I booted his butt out. And Sheila, well, I'm not asking her for dinner anymore. She criticizes me. And Sean, no more weightlifting with Sean or whatever. He's a critic. No. All you're doing is turning a blind eye to knowledge. And whether that knowledge is useful or not depends not on the person handing it to you, but on you, how you decide to look at it. So let's go to some more things here related to your areas of expertise here. And Sean, I know that you're into fitness, and so what might you say about? Let's just talk about maybe mental weight loss. I know a lot of people want to lose weight, but I have this crazy theory that before you can be successful in getting physically fit, you got to be mentally fit, or that physical fitness is going to be short-lived. And a lot of people say, I want to lose weight. Well, probably some of the first weights you need to lose are what we in my field call cognitive distortions, the mental weight of cognitive distortions. So how do you teach people how to get out of their own way so that they can be fit of body as well as fit of mind?
Yeah, so great question, Dr. Heath. So there's a couple of things there. Number one is, we talked about men because I primarily deal with men. A lot of guys nowadays just very much lack in self-confidence. So that's a mental thing. One of the ways that we start to build that self-confidence back up is we start very, very small. So we'll get very practical. We start very, very small in form of getting some wins, in form of starting to live in a healthier way. So one of the things I might tell someone is like, hey, you've done nothing in regards to physical fitness or nutrition or anything like that for a very long time. This is a big deal for you mentally and physically. So the first thing that we're going to do is I want you to do this small task. Let's take hydration, for instance. Most people don't drink enough water. I want you to drink 64 ounces of water every day for a week. So that sounds very minute, but what that does is once we're able to do that and hit that quote unquote water number every day for a week, we've now stacked a win. Okay, so now we're going to add something on top of that, and that's what we're going to continue to do. We're going to build momentum. We're going to continue to stack wins. And what that's going to do is it starts to build that self-confidence back up. And it does that because you're keeping the promises that you're making to yourself along the way. So you're retraining your brain to now trust yourself because you've set out on this goal or this thing, and you've started small and you've stacked these wins, and you're like, okay, now I can do this. And I've trained myself to now trust myself again. So the self-confidence piece is the first part of that mental clarity. The other piece to that is, Dr. Heath, we talked about earlier, as men, we're called to lead, but we're called to lead from a place of serving. What that comes into is it becomes misinterpreted as we can never do anything for ourselves. We always have to do everything for those around us, whether it be for our families, our coworkers, anything like that. So what I have to help guys with a retrain, I had to do this myself, is, as men, when we're pouring out to those around us, oftentimes if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're trying to pour from an empty cup. So the people that we love, those around us, are getting our scraps instead of getting our best. So when we actually take the time to pour into ourselves, and in my area of expertise specifically in our physical fitness, in our nutrition, then we start to fill our cup back up, which then means we can better serve others, we can better serve our families, we can better serve those around us, because we're actually coming from a place of abundance. We feel good, we look good, and we start to be able to give from a place of abundance versus trying to scrape the bottom of the barrel and giving it to those that we love.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautifully said. I want to go to Tim in a minute on the problem of confidence in our society today, particularly with men. But I want to point out something Sean said and related to my own life. Sitting right out there, right that way. If you guys drop by sometime, I'll give you a ride. In my 2004 F-250 four-wheel drive. It's a rare thing that I need to lock it in to get through snow and ice. But hey, this winter we did. It's a rare thing that a friend calls me and says, "Hey, man, can you come pull me out of the ditch?" I actually have a chain that I bought for that reason, because people kept on calling me. And I'd say, "Man, I don't have a chain, you know." So I bought a chain. So now I can pull more people out of the ditch when they call me. And I had one friend down the road. He got stuck in the ditch one winter. I kid you not 100 feet from his driveway. I said, "Man, what are you doing on your cell phone?" He said, "Yeah." "Well, get off your freaking cell phone, you know. I won't have to come pull you out of the ditch." My point being is that I don't often have to lock my four-wheel drive into action. However, I keep on it a great set of tires. I keep the oil changed. I keep the tank full. I keep it in a good state of repair, so that when I do need it, it is ready for action. Men, women too, listen. How would you expect to perform if action is needed if you don't keep yourself in a state of readiness where you can perform? Many of you that follow me have heard me say this before, and I stole it from Stephen Covey, but I remember when he was training me in a small group of people, he asked us, he said, "Have you ever been too busy driving to stop and get gas?" So that's Deshaun's point. If you don't stay fueled up, you're not long going to be able to serve anybody, which means that keeping yourself in good repair and fueled up is not selfish. It's self-full, being of a servant mentality, because you know what? Even my wife tells me, she'll say, "Hey, it's getting cold outside." She knows that diesel trucks have a hard time starting when it's cold. Man, she says, "Hey, have you made sure the batteries are in good repair?" And I say, "Thank you so much. I'm going to hook up the charger." And so there's all kinds of ways that we need to be hooking up the charger in our life, getting enough sleep, getting in that hydration. I've already had, gosh, how much have I had? 36 ounces water already today. And my water intake will kind of wrap up at 1.25 gallons because I'm trying to stay fueled up, you know. But I want to go to Tim. Tim, why is it that you think, let's just imagine, I can almost imagine it's just us sitting around a campfire, guys. And I really am curious about this because I see it so often. It seems like it's a new problem. Maybe I'm not seeing that properly, but I don't think I've ever seen so many people, and men in particular, no offense to anybody, but men in particular, that really lack confidence. And I'm wondering, have you noticed the same, Tim, and why is that? And what can we do about it?
Well, I would first say that I believe confidence is the result of a track record of successes. And if we don't take the time to recognize the successes and the wins that we have in life, it's difficult to build that confidence. And sometimes we need people in our lives. And one of the things I try to do is create wins for people. I may intentionally put someone in a position, or if I see them in a situation, not manipulate, but implement a scenario where they're able to see themselves be successful. And the more people are able to see success, no matter how big or small, if we take the time to recognize it and acknowledge it, that we actually accomplished something, to realize that we actually have the ability to accomplish things, then it gets easier. And putting yourself in a position where you're willing to get comfortable being uncomfortable, to take the risks, to be willing to experience the mistakes, because if you aren't willing, if you're too afraid to make mistakes, there is no opportunity to succeed. And as they say, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. So for me personally, I encourage people taking the risks. I encourage people taking the chances and putting themselves in situations that they may not be totally comfortable, safely, of course. And with my community, it's about communication and having those interactions publicly in front of people to see that it's okay to make mistakes. And I think the fear of making mistakes the fear of being judged by others because what they did doesn't line up with what other people may think it should look like or think the outcome should be. There's a tendency to be afraid, and they're more concerned about others than what it is that they're supposed to be doing. And I'll say this really quickly. It goes back to the question you posed to Joey about the ideas. And I think sometimes our ideas are inspirations. And I know for me, it's about inspiration. And whether someone else has already done it or not, it doesn't matter, because if I feel led to do it, then I may not understand why in the moment. My job is to then learn, educate, and prepare myself to execute. And I know that once it's inspired and I'm led and driven in my heart, I know it's just a matter of time, as long as I position myself. And I think that's something that can help fuel the confidence, but also inspire us that, as Sheila said, there really is no bad idea, but then there may be bad timing. And if you're going to be one of those people who set yourself apart, sometimes we have to be willing to do things that others haven't done, that others have not been able to do, or that others may be afraid to do, because you may be the one that this particular opportunity was waiting to show up to actually make it happen. And like I tell people in the community, there are times people will say, well, I don't want to say what I was going to say because someone already said it. And I tell them, say it anyway, because you have a different experience. You have a different perspective. You have a different way of presenting it. And plus, someone may have just recently joined and didn't hear what the other person said. So don't be afraid of that. And those moments like that also help fuel the confidence, because they realize that, hey, people actually enjoyed what I said. They appreciated what I said. And that itself is a win for some people. And that helps fuel confidence as well.
It really does. And I put up a graphic on our screen here to illustrate one of those things that Tim said. Is your brain really does notice, and Sean said this also. Your brain really does notice those small wins. And so instead of getting out there and trying to climb mountains, just make your freaking bed. Admiral McRaven here wrote a whole book about it. Because why? Well, because neurologically your brain notices a track record of keeping your word to yourself. Every time you keep your word to yourself, it is a win. Every time. I'm going to, remember to put the toilet seat down like my wife asked me to. When you do that, that's a win. When you tell yourself, I'm going to pick up my own dishes, men. Imagine that. I mean, goodness, I know it sounds like it defies the laws of physics for you to get off your butt and wait on yourself. Believe me, the world will not end when you pick up your own crap and put it away. I hope my wife's not listening. She'll remind me of this, I promise. She'll say, well, you pick that up. One of the best things we can do is to make and keep our word to ourselves. And I love that book by Admiral McRaven there. You guys can check that out and let me know what you think about it. And so speaking of which, I want to go to Sheila and then over to Joey as we kind of segue into leadership, because I kind of almost just did. Leadership in your own home is making promises and keeping promises. And hey there, Waylon. Waylon the Farmer, a master level podcaster himself. It is good to see you here, Waylon. Nino, thank you for coming today. Nino says, preparation is key for dealing with life's challenges. Yes, indeed. How prepared are you today for life challenges? And you're going to be more prepared when you make promises, but keep those promises. Anybody can make promises. It's the keeping. But guess what? Your brain notices when you lose by failing to keep your promises. So what are some other ways, guys, that you can lead with, what you might call mental precision? You can define that however you want. and clarity. Let's talk about leadership. Sheila, what do you think?
You confused me with the question because then I was paying attention to what you said. So what's the actual
Yeah.
question?
So how do you teach people how to lead with mental precision? You know, how do people really, I guess I would say, how do we tone down all the noise in our head and pick out the things that are the most important? Mental precision.
Well, we go back to that clarity. And last Wednesday, I had an exercise for an hour. We were a group of women. We met online. And it was called Spring Renewal. And the exercises that we went through in that hour was revisiting our core values, right? And that puts into perspective in like 2-3 words, what do I want to focus on right now? And then setting out that vision as to, well, what do I want to do this week? What do I want to do this year, right? Because if you don't envision it, it's kind of like if you don't speak it out, then you don't know where you're going. It's like when you have a road, when you're going to take a road trip, or, well, some of us don't even need the road trip. We still turn on maps or Google Maps to get across town, right? So the vision is that endpoint. Where am I going to right now? So it could be 5 minutes away. It could be 5 hours away. It could be 5 days away. And so I think the most important thing about leadership is that it all starts from within. And it's a form of self-leadership. And sometimes if you're a parent, for example, or a spouse, the best way to lead is by example, because other people will see what your intentions and what your actions are. And so taking those micro steps is the way that I would approach.
Yeah. It always starts from within, and I love what Waylon the farmer said. Waylon said, "Plan ahead and plan for setbacks." By the way, yeah, guys, drop your questions and comments here. By the way, if you're the member of a DM group on X, please share out the space, or maybe other people that could benefit from what we're talking about. If you're a member of a community on X, please share out the link to the space, to this live stream here. You never know who may benefit. And even after we kind of wrap up here in about 36 minutes, send it to some folks. I've had folks reach out to me days or weeks after a broadcast and say, hey, you know what? That was some really useful information. So do us a favor and share it out. And by the way, I don't know if Sean has a samurai sword or not, Michael. Sean, you got a samurai sword? I see you got a guitar back there, but maybe you're hiding a samurai sword inside the guitar case.
I'm going to have to plead the fifth on that one, Dr.
See, Michael, he's going to keep that to himself. I'll tell you, I do have a samurai sword. It's in my office. I'm in the kitchen. I don't have it here with me only because my wife won't let me keep my samurai sword in the kitchen. I tell her it would be great for cutting cabbages. So much more fun cutting cabbages and onions. I diced up some onions, and I don't like onions at all. But I do love dicing things up. And that's what we're here doing today, guys. We're treating those sabotaging thoughts that you have like onions, and we're chopping them up. And man, I'm a good onion chopper, and I pulverize those things. But thank you guys for being here. Sarah, good to see you here. Sarah's a big fan of Tim's, and we're all a big fan of Sarah's. So thank you for being here. If you ever get a chance to hear Sarah in a space, sit there and listen as she masters her voice and shares out some wonderful ideas. But going back to what Waylon the farmer said, I really appreciate that, Waylon, because that's what I do. I think there's a fine line between picking out what could be a setback and catastrophizing. If you think that something could be a weak point, like, I have tires on my truck. So I don't drive down the road thinking about having a flat tire all the time, but I do have a spare tire. And I've got, a lug wrench, and I've got a jack, and, Jack, I kidnapped him. I keep him stuffed in the back seat. He's the guy that changes my tires. His name is Jack. No, I'm just joking. That's my dad joke for the day. But I think there is a fine line between catastrophizing and having a game plan, such as Plan B or Plan C. But the problem is, that does lend itself to more negativity bias. And also, if you've had some things that you call failures. See, look at there. Michael's laughing at my dad jokes. Michael, you're a true friend. You're one of the people that laugh at my dad jokes. So thank you very much. We're gathering people that'll laugh at my dad jokes. I'll send you a free T-shirt one of these days when I get them fixed up. And I am working on them. That's not a dad joke. I'm really working on some Monday Mindset Mojo T-shirts. But having a game plan and then not catastrophizing. So Sheila, that's a really good point. Let me go to Joey and see kind of how he keeps his mindset free of catastrophizing, awfulizing, as Albert Ellis, a famous psychologist out of New York, used to say, awfulizing, but still have a game plan that considers what Waylon talks about, who, gosh, Waylon, man, I don't know if I'm put that up on screen because that sounds kind of weird. Waylon says, I just smashed the onions with my bare feet like wine. Yeah. Remind me never to get any onions from Waylon's house. And I'm just hoping you don't do it naked, my friend, because maybe you could blur out the parts and put it up on YouTube or something. I think it'd be a big hit. Just make sure you blur out the right parts, you know. But so Joey, how do you? Sheilah's gonna turn her camera off or something. Yeah, it's just a whole picture, Waylon.
I take it all back.
There actually are, such as Waylon smashing onions with his bare feet naked. And I'm sorry for that word picture. If there's only one thing you take with you, I bet that'll be it. Is a naked Waylon, the indoor farmer, naked smashing onions. It sounds like a rock group, though. You know, they're smashing pumpkins. Why not smashing onions? You know. So, Joey, how do you keep your mindset free and clear of cognitive distortions, awfulizing, catastrophizing, but still be in mind that everything doesn't work perfectly, and it's probably good to have a plan B or C? What do you think?
Yeah, it's really hard. Um, I, of course think that it's best to start with a plan. The worst case scenario is you wake up and you don't know what to do. And my plans hardly ever work how I plan them out. In fact, they pretty much never do. And I also think to some degree, you're not really going to be able to avoid chaos and catastrophes. I don't think I've ever heard anyone successful talk about how they became successful, nothing bad ever happened, there were never any setbacks. So I think that those are sort of inevitable. I think that the best chance that you really have is seeking the truth relentlessly. That's really, and that's very difficult. It's very difficult because when you're in chaos and when things aren't going well, the truth can point to mistakes that people have made, whether it be the group or whether it be individuals. There's a reason why a mistake was made. You had a plan and things didn't go according to the plan, and that's because some part of the plan was not correct. But you can't avoid that because nobody could tell the future. If I could tell the future, then I would be charging people a lot more for the services that I provide, right? And so I think that it goes back to what the foundational values and ideas are of the group. Because once you get into a situation where people cannot handle the truth and the truth ends up doing more harm than good, um, it's just not going to work. So I don't think that there's any perfect answer to that question. I think it's really hard, and I think that things will inevitably run into problems. So the best chance you have is surrounding yourself with the right people and seeking the truth, and then being able to pivot and iterate as efficiently and constructively as you can.
I love that. And I want to make a comment on that in a minute. Waylon the farmer says, yes, thank you, Waylon. My dad jokes are actually just wisdom in disguise, but many don't appreciate them, as I'm sure you realize. And no, Michael, we're not going to share out Sheila's phone number. No, don't DM me. I'm going to keep it a secret. You can keep it a secret. I can keep it a secret. Nobody gets Sheila's phone number. Although I'm sure Waylon would be glad to share his phone number in case you need some naked onion smashing. It's a whole new side gig that Waylon's going to be offering. You'll see it soon pop up as a Gumroad course. He'll be teaching you how to do it also. But Joey, yeah, I mean, there are no perfect plans, you know. And the way I look at that is mistakes are a bit like pluggable holes in a ship. Would you rather know about the leaky hole? Would you rather know about the leak so you can plug it? Or would you rather just sink your boat? So over time, Waylon, man, over time, they kind of build up and your ship sinks quicker. You guys can go over to the indoorfarmer.locals.com where everything you ever wanted to know about naked onion smashing, Waylon has this content for you later today, up until the point that he gets banned from social media. Maybe he's going to start his own OnlyFans page, his onion smashing OnlyFans page. So let's move on there. So yeah, there's no perfect plan. I think the key is having a system that picks up mistakes. How about that? How about instead of ignoring mistakes or pretending like they don't happen, have a system? And I recommend this in recovery. One of the first things we do with clients that I work with in addiction recovery is to have an accountability circle. And the person in recovery actually gives them permission to call out their weak spots. Because we're not picking on them, we're trying to help lift them up to a better life. But they can't do that as long as these hidden anchors, these mistakes waiting to happen. And so we have an accountability circle. One of those things, and by the way, you guys can use that. I recommend one of the first things I do also is I recommend they take this. I send a text message that they copy paste, and it says, today is X number of day 37, clean, dry, and sober. And they send it to everybody in that circle. It's kind of an early warning system if they don't send it. And so what's your early warning system, folks, for these mistakes that Joey was talking about? You know, how quickly you catch your mistakes, I think, is related to how successful that you could be. Because just because you don't recognize them doesn't mean they're not there in the making. And some mistakes kind of have to reach a tipping point before you ever notice them. I talk about Amazon a lot. Amazon really prides itself on picking up on mistakes before a customer does. Their view is that if a customer notifies us of a mistake before we know about it, that's a failure. The mistake is not a failure. Not knowing about the mistake is a failure. Let's just take Tim, for example. He teaches people how to be better speakers. Confident Speaking Space on X. You guys check it out sometime. Would you rather persist in a vocalization, a tone, volume, and cadence that doesn't work, or even doing what I do, and have mistakes that everyone notices except you? Well, I'd rather just know about it. And you're really helping me by telling me, hey, you know, Doc, this is something that if you did, it would make your show better. So, audience, if you're listening and you see something that I'm doing that you don't like, let me know. I'll consider it. I'll field it among a few different people. And I may change that or I may not. Because also you can't please everybody. So something that you don't like, 100 other people may love it. I do a daily space Monday through Friday, midday mindset. And at the end of it, I usually do a meditation, 2 to 3 minutes. Well, I've had a few people say, gosh, I really don't like the meditation thing. And so I stopped doing it. And then I had a whole bunch of people say, what are you doing? I'm here for the meditation thing. Why'd you stop doing it? Well, I had somebody complain about it or say they didn't like it. Well, yeah, but I love it. And so it's really you being in charge of whether you label something a mistake or not. Maybe just because someone doesn't like it does not mean it is a mistake. So before we go on here to our other speakers, let me just say that you have to be a master of your own brand. And what you're doing is not being faithful to what you like. what you're doing is being faithful to the integrity of that brand. Here's a shout out for Tim. Waylon loves Tim's space, as do I. Great space. Waylon says you can't please everybody. Yep, you stick around a minute, you notice you can't please everybody. Tim is saying, or I'm sorry, Nino is saying, Gitano is saying, good morning, Tim. Wonderful account. Gitano, Nino's Digital Cafe has there. And let's see, Waylon says it's hard for me to stay positive, but I don't believe you should have to stay positive all the times. It helps to think of mistakes as lessons. What do you guys think about that? I want to address that before we go on. Let me see if I can stretch it out here where it's more readable. But what do you think about staying positive? Because I don't want to be a Pollyanna where people think that you got to walk around, hoorah, hoorah all the time. How do any of you guys just jump in? What do you think about the whole positivity thing?
I view it as positivity will give you hope. So it's not about always being, happy-go-lucky, so to speak. But I do believe that, well, let's talk about setbacks, right? We all face them. Sometimes they're planned and sometimes they're completely unexpected. And an example, for example, could be COVID, right? No one was expecting COVID. COVID was a huge setback for some, but it was where others found opportunity, especially those that had already leveraged the digital space. And I think that as long as you're able to step away, maybe 24 hours, so I would call it a shift of perspective. That's my 2 cents. So it's not about, being that cheerleader and saying everything is going great. It's about shifting that perspective. Gratitude works wonders, right? Because when you just shift it and you see things from that perspective, you can probably find at least one thing to be grateful for. And to me, that's part of staying positive.
Man, we can't get away. Everybody's bragging on Tim today. Hey, well, what about my show? What about my show, Sarah? Do you like my show? I mean, goodness, enough with the positive comments toward Tim. I'm hosting the show. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, Tim's great. Tim's great. Love Tim. Hey, a shout out for somebody besides Tim. A shout out for Sheila. Sheila, you got a point today. Thank you. No, all you guys are great. I really appreciate it. And what about the rest of you guys? Speaking of Tim, what do you think about the whole positivity thing? Is it too much, or how do you think about that?
Well, I do want to say thank you and good morning as well to Sarah, Michael, Nino, and Waylon. Thank you all for the love. And I think in reference to that point, even going back to the question you posed to Joey, I think that's what led to Waylon's comment in terms of the awfulizing. I think for me, I plan for the worst and expect the best. And one of the things that I encourage people to do, especially when it comes to the fear that stops people from doing certain things, is to think about what is it that you're afraid of and what's the worst case scenario. And once you figure out what the worst case scenario is, what would you do if it were to happen? So that you have a plan just in case it happens. But now that you have a plan, if the worst case scenario were to happen, which in most cases it doesn't, but if it does, you know what you're going to do, so you can move forward without that fear of it happening, because you know what you're going to do if it does. And it gives you a little more comfort just doing what you know you're equipped and capable to do. And as it pertains to the positivity, for me, I've learned to appreciate any circumstance, because there's a reason for everything that happens. And if you get a flat tire on the way to work or on the way to a show or whatever you're going to, in my mind, okay, thank you, Lord, because I could have gone through a traffic light and a truck blindsided me or T-boned me. Who knows why that may have happened? So I learned to see the bright side of every situation, and I don't allow myself to get caught up in how other people may perceive that. And I think it's important that we understand, again, the why. It goes back to the why with what Sarah was saying and what you were saying, Dr. Heath, whether someone appreciates what we're doing or not, why are you doing it? And if you're doing it for a specific purpose, everyone isn't your customer. everyone isn't the person that you're supposed to be reaching. And we have to be comfortable and understand who we're trying to serve. I know who my people are. I'm not trying to reach the experts. So there may be people who know a lot more about communication than I do. But my people, my why is the ones that are trying to get started, that are trying to find a breakthrough, that are trying to overcome the fear so that they can be positive about who they are as people and not awfulize situations thinking, well, no one's going to like me. And I want to help those people get past that.
You know, Tim, what I've discovered is often the people that know the most on a certain subject matter, that know the most, are the worst at its execution. So often, the people that know the most about communication really aren't the best communicators. And I think some of the same hangups that we all have, they have too. Because when you're communicating, it's just you, man. I mean, you're up there on stage. It's you on the mic. It's you on the camera. And so knowledge is not practice, and practice is not knowledge. You know, I find that I know a lot of people that know a lot more than I do about psychology, but they don't practice it. They can teach a course on it. They could go down a checklist. Goodness, everybody with Google can instantly know more than I know about psychology. But that's Google. That's not real life. And I have lots of people get on Spaces and run down a diagnostic checklist. Listen, knowing a diagnostic checklist or reading a diagnostic checklist from freaking Google or Grok or ChatGPT is not diagnosis. Diagnosis isn't a checklist. So knowledge and practice are two very, very different things. I love what Nino said. What I learned from Tim is my wording. I don't worry. I handle now. And that really feeds into what I was going to share with you guys. And I put it up here in the chat. You know, when problems arise, you have a choice. You can look for reasons to say no, or you can look for reasons to say yes. And I'll share a quick situation where I was speaking at a hostage negotiators conference out in Las Vegas. Had my handy dandy laptop. I had all the different connectors to hook to the overhead projector and everything. I don't know. We had a whole bunch of people, a whole room full of people. Huge conference room. And the hotel did not have any of the connections which my connectors fit. So how am I going to put my amazing PowerPoint on the screen? Well, no worries, because my dear friend John, the facilitator for the conference, was there. I say, John, I don't have the connector that fits this, you know, ancient projector. You know, it's like from the 50s or something. And I said, what do you do? I said, can you find me one? And John's wonderful words of advice. I still remember the flutter and the warmth in my heart when he said it. And he said it out loud. I think most of the front row could hear him. He said, well, Heath, I think you're screwed. Thank you, John. That is so helpful. You know, butterflies and everything. And so what I realized is that everybody in the class, law enforcement, military, members of the World Court from the Netherlands, is that they had a booklet. And so instead of looking for reasons to say, no, I can't do it, I look for reasons to say yes. Guys, it's a segue. The technology won't work, but lucky for you, you've got a book. We're going to go through the book. Presto changeo, we went with the book. I don't think anybody noticed a whole lot. I think it was a much more memorable engagement because something cool happened. If everything goes right through life, you tend to remember less of life. So when things go wrong, those things that go wrong are not as preferred, are a bit like thumbtacks for your experience. And they kind of thumbtack episode of didn't go right to didn't go right to didn't go right. And then you remember more of what went okay. But if everything goes okay, you really have fewer memories of those things because your brain isn't structured to just remember the things that went well. Those are the things that you need to write down to remind yourself. We talked about success stacking with Sean, Joey, everybody's talked about it, Tim and Sheila. Success stacking. Write those things down. But part of that is writing down the success of how you handled a mistake, the success of how you handled a mess up. And yes, Sarah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I was joking with you. I was joking, but I appreciate the love. And I'm so glad to hear you guys brag on our speakers because they're wonderful, wonderful speakers. And so even in a space, even in a live stream, one of the things I love to do is I will point out my mistakes. If I make mistakes, I'll say, oops, and I'll point it out because you know what? Speaking it kind of takes the power out of it. Speaking it kind of takes the power out of it. Also, it lets others know that you're human. And a theological word is edify. It edifies them because they say, wow, man, Sean screwed up and he's got this account on X and teaches men, and Joey screwed this up, but you know, he's Joey, and Tim and Sheila, hey, if it's okay for them to screw up, it's okay for me to screw up. And so, hey, Joshua, my good friend Joshua Altman, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Guys, we're out of here in about 12 minutes, so I'd love to see some of your questions and what you learned from the space today, what you'd like to hear, because we're about to wrap up with how these guys deal with self-doubt, how you rewire your own cognition. What are some beliefs that you had to break or break down, and maybe some tactical tools for everyday wins? You know, let's go to Sheila, Joey, Sean, and then Tim. Sheila, how do you deal with self-doubt, cognitive rewiring? You know, what are some beliefs that once upon a time you had to break apart?
Oh, I face them all the time. Even being in a group filled with men, for example, today, right? The first thing you were talking about, men, it's like, wait, my perspective will be a bit different. So you embrace it. Self-doubt, you learn to embrace it. It's not going to ever go away. And during my master's degree, I heard Oprah Winfrey say that every time she interviewed a guest, even if they were the president of the United States of America, they would all always say, did I do okay? And so it's just a part, you know, a natural part of life. It's what you do with it that counts. So embrace it.
Natural part of life. Kim says, always love Sheila. Thank you, Kim, for being here. Appreciate that. And again, if you guys have questions, just shout them out. But Joey, I mean, do you have to deal with some sabotaging beliefs? What might they have been, and what do you do about them?
Yeah, of course. I would suspect that everybody deals with it to some degree. For me, I mean, it always happens when I'm idle. It always happens when I'm sitting and thinking and not actively doing something. So for me, the best way to mitigate it is to ensure that, again, it's best to at least have some idea of a plan for your day so that you don't spend time wondering what you should do. And then all of a sudden now you're wondering what you should do. You start thinking, well, I don't know what to do. And the reason I don't know what to do is because, I'm worthless and I have nothing and I'm not smart and all these sorts of things. So I think the best thing you can do is do something. And it could be something as simple as go for a walk. Most problems get solved going for walks. Call someone. And surround yourself with good people, because those people will inspire you and they will give you energy.
They really will. Surround yourself with people that can both support and challenge. And I mean both. That's really the perfect combination. Support, but challenge but support, challenge in a supportive way. By the way, if you're going to challenge somebody, ask yourself, am I doing this in good faith? Am I criticizing just to criticize or to try to prove to myself that I'm better with them? Or am I criticizing with good intent in order to lift them up? And no, always complimenting people just to be complimenting that doesn't really help people. That's not really genuine. I like to say there's a bit of a 1-2 punch with compliments and with criticism. Is criticize and end with a compliment, or compliment and then share a criticism. Hey, I love these 3 things that you're doing. Here's one thing you might tweak a bit. I love this stuff. Have you considered this thing? Have you considered? You don't have to tell them it's wrong. You can say, have you considered? By the way, imagine doing that with yourself. Saying to yourself, even writing it down in a journal, call yourself by name. I love these things that you're doing. Why not consider this? How about considering this other thing? You can actually have a second chair conversation with yourself. Sean, what are maybe a belief that you struggled with once upon a time back in the day that you had to reset, check, restructure, and kind of get it? What am I trying to say here? My dad would say I have my tongue wrapped around my eye teeth. I can't see a word I'm saying. How'd you reset your mindset historically?
Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback on Sheila a little bit. It's stuff I still deal with to this day at times. It's just better now than it used to be. But I think self-doubt, I think imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, like any of that stuff, even people that are super successful, much further ahead than I am, or some of us, is just, they still deal with that stuff from time to time. I think it's a human thing. And like Sheila said, I think it's one of those things that we just have to continue to get better at dealing with. I love what Joey said about community. That has been like having godly men around me that I can call in those moments when I'm having a hard time, when my mindset is not the greatest. It's just been, guys that know me and that I know well and can kind of speak into my life and say, hey man, you're doing this well, you're doing this great, or, maybe you need to check up and try something different. And then the other piece to that absolutely is action. Action cures anxiety. And I believe it's Alex Hormozy that says, if you're stressed, it's just because you have decisions that need to be made and you haven't made them yet.
Yeah, and that's called the Zeigarnik effect or Zeigarnik phenomenon. Imagine going to work and you can't remember if you locked your door, shut the garage, or turned off the coffee pot. Your brain is in that open loop and it needs to be closed, and it's going to keep it on your menu until you close it. And so taking action shows you that you could do something. Again, instead of looking for reasons to say no to the next step, look for a reason to say yes to the next step and take action. And Waylon liked that. Thank you, Waylon. And shout out to Sean from my friend Michael. Oh, I overlaid that there, but you guys can read it. Well, let's go to Tim and then kind of wrap it up with Sheila, and then we're going to leave you guys with how you can get in touch with these wonderful folks here today. And so what do you think, Tim? What's a mindset you had to tackle, a belief that you had to tackle?
Yeah, for me, there was a point in time where if I had an idea that I wanted to pursue and I may start exploring it, and once I realized there were other people doing it, it caused me to back away from it. So for some reason, I guess I was afraid of the competition, or I felt like my thoughts and perspectives wouldn't be good enough. And I realized that is so far from the truth. Nike sells shoes, Reebok, Adidas, all these companies that all sell shoes. So there's enough room for everyone to win. It's just a matter of who are we trying to win with. And when it comes to that self-doubt, I think it goes back to the why. We have to understand, why are we doing it? And if we lose focus because we're looking at what other people are doing, just say hosting spaces, for instance. If you get caught up looking at what someone else is doing and you see how many followers they have, you see how large their space is, then you may get distracted and feel discouraged because you don't have the same numbers they have. But when you understand the why, I'm not doing it for the likes. I'm not doing it for the numbers or for the oohs and ahs. I'm doing it because it's a service. And that, for me, helps maintain the focus and not get distracted by the other things that will happen organically when you're doing what you're supposed to do, and when you're doing it well with the right frame of mind and in the right heart. And that's what really helps me. And that's also why I always encourage people to understand the why before you do something, because money, it's a motivator, but it isn't really sustainable. Because if you don't see the money as fast as you want to see it, or the amount that you want, you get discouraged. If you don't get the applause and praise that you're looking for, you get discouraged. So understanding the why and being solid on why in the beginning is really helpful for me to maintain that focus and not compare myself to other people, because I know what my purpose and what my goal is that I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes I saw on social media a long time ago is, "Don't judge your chapter 1, 2, or 3 by someone else's chapter 37." You know, you're really judging just the tip of the iceberg without noticing all the work that went in before that. I particularly don't, and I'm being genuine here, I don't particularly believe that I'm a great speaker. I think I do a fair job. I'm always working on it. I'm trying to be mindful of my words. And this is after speaking publicly for 40 years. I've been speaking public. You'd think I'd be better, right? So I've been speaking publicly for 40 years. And it's always a work in progress. And I think that my greatest progress has come when I have been willing to notice my own deficits and not be sidetracked by those. And when I've been willing to have other people give me critique and believe that they're doing so for a good purpose, in good faith. And that's what I believe. I believe that there's some shred or thread of information there, even in some of the harshest critique, that I can use and do a bit better next time. I spoke of trolling, and I had a guy that came on my space. One of my favorite all-time trolling stories is he came on my space, which on X, it's about like your living room, you know. So imagine somebody coming into your living room and telling you this. The guy came in, he said, "You know, you really talk too much." Thinking, man, it's my show, you know. But, you know, maybe it's a good point. Maybe it's a good point. And so I've tried to become, maybe with varying degrees of success. Yeah, Waylon says you talk too much. Waylon, were you the troll, man? You were in disguise that day. Yeah, my son would agree with you, and he would agree with the troll. He'd say, "Dad, you know, you do go on and on." But to look for a shred of helpfulness. So if you're going to get criticized, and you will, why waste it? You know, why waste that opportunity to say, is there, oh, Waylon was in the space when that, no kidding, I wish I knew who that guy was. I'd probably send him a t-shirt or something. I'm going to maybe make a t-shirt that says I talk too much. But be willing to receive critique, and to, you know, part of that critique is receiving critique from yourself, but keep that in balance. It's not going to do you any good to go around beating up on yourself. So ask yourself, when you're beating up on yourself, what value, when you're saying I suck, okay, I've actually had patients tell me that. I kid you not. And I do this professionally, you know, this therapy thing. I've had patients say to me, "Gosh, you know, man, I just feel like I'm worthless." And I said, "Well, gosh, I don't know. We just met. Maybe you are. Let's look at the evidence, you know? I mean, could we take you to court and convict you, you know, jury of 12 and a judge of 1, could we convict you of being worthless?" Let's look at the evidence. When you're critiquing yourself, look at the evidence. When someone else is critiquing you, look at their point. Look at the evidence. And by the way, being of worth is not a feeling. Words matter. That's why NLP is such a powerful technique, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. Thoughts, cognitions, are not feelings, emotions. Cognitions are not emotions. Emotions are not cognitions. So when you say things like, I feel worthless, your brain plucks up an emotion. Your brain plucks up an emotion. Then in the future, every time you have that emotion like sadness, anxiety, or self-directed disgust, your brain is already associated with I'm worthless. You do not want an emotion associated with a cognition called I'm worthless. Presence of disgust at yourself does not mean you're worthless. And on that point, before we go around the room and see, oh, thank you, Kim, you're a fabulous speaker, I'm going to try to convince myself of that. Again, I think I do okay. I know fabulous speakers. I don't think I'm one of them, but that also gives me a target. I will never be Denzel Washington. I will never be Morgan. Those guys, oh my goodness, Anthony Hopkins. My 3 top speakers, by the way, Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, and Anthony Hopkins. If I could channel those guys, I really would be, the best speaker ever. So, and I do that. By the way, there's a tip for you. When you're speaking, it's okay to have a mindset that I'm Morgan Freeman, or I'm Anthony Hopkins, or Denzel Washington, and you can live stream that thought experiment, and you'll be amazed at what happens. I do that all the time. I'll kind of pick a speaker I want to emulate, and I do my best, to imagine them with a southern drawl, by the way. Morgan Freeman has a bit of a southern drawl. so, and everybody loves him. So, a few things to clear up here real quick, and I love what Bryce said. Bryce said, communicating well happens in flow states. Top marks, Bryce, top marks, Bryce. I do best when I feel confident. Confidence is not a feeling. That's good news. Because if confidence is a feeling, you lose it every time you have explosive diarrhea. I would not base confidence on my intestinal status. Confidence is a thought process. Thought process, not a feeling. And Bryce, a dear brother, I love him. But when you're working on confidence, look at the mechanics of it. Confidence is a construct, and that construct is built on thought processes. And we talked about the habit stack, and you gain that every time you keep your word to yourself. And Waylon had a question here. Where was that question, Waylon? I'm trying to pull it up here, man. Lots of great stuff in the feed here. But Waylon was talking about mistakes. Oh, here it is. And he wanted to get our opinion. The only mistakes that are not worth it are the ones where you already knew better. What do you think, panel? Let's answer this question as we begin to wrap up here. Any ideas? The only mistakes that are not worth it are the ones where you already knew better. So it's really repeating the same mistake over and over again. What do you think?
I would say it could be. Oh, go ahead, Sheila. Well, I guess it could be loaded because sometimes there are levels and layers of the mistake, and there may be a process that you need to get through. Just say, for instance, something technical. You're trying to build a database, and there's certain steps that you take, and you might miss a step along the way. So I think as long as you're learning from it, it may be a different type of mistake in the same or similar scenario, and it feels like you made the exact same mistake, and it may not actually be. But I just think just learn from it, continue to learn, because sometimes we mess up, we forget, and it's okay because we're human. So that's what I would say about it.
I love it. Sheila, what do you think?
Very similar to what he's saying, right? Sometimes we learn from our mistake, but maybe, third time's the charm. So I wouldn't 100% say don't be afraid to repeat the same mistake, especially if we go back even to entrepreneurship, right? Because maybe you just tweak one thing and you knew that went wrong, but you just changed one aspect of it. And so don't be afraid to try. You can't fail if you don't try. And
I love that, and to that point, let me just, some of you guys know this story. It's one of my favorite stories. I think I read it several decades ago, but this is a story in 5 chapters, and this is by Portia Nelson. This was written in 1977. Chapter number 1, I walk down the street, there's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in, I'm lost, I'm helpless. It isn't my fault, it takes forever to find a way out. Chapter number 2, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I still don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter number 3, I walk down the same street. Mistakes, mistakes, mistakes. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. It's my fault. I know where I am. I get out immediately. You see the progression of responsibility. I realize it's a habit. I realize it is my fault. Not Tim's fault, Sean's, not Joey's fault, not Sheila's. Not the fault of the audience. It's my fault. I know where I am. I get out immediately. Chapter number 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Well, you might think that the story could end there. But what about chapter number 5? I'm going to ask you guys, what's your chapter number 5 when it comes to mistakes you've made with your confidence? What's your chapter number 5? Here's Portia Nelson's chapter number 5. I walk down a different street. Make her chapter 5 your chapter 5 and decide to challenge your own assumptions, challenge what you thought about yourself when you've been your own worst enemy, and walk down a different street. This is called a paradigm shift. So I hope if there's one thing you've taken from the space today other than Waylon's naked onion smashing, which is the new rock group Waylon is forming, is that you can change your paradigm. You can change how you think about your thinking. That confidence is not a feeling. That worth is not a feeling. It is a mindset, and mindset is built on cognitive constructs. It is literally the architecture that you build in your brain by deciding intentionally what you're going to think, what you're going to focus on. If you have a sabotaging mindset, it's time to switch your paradigm. Let's go around the room for a final word of wisdom from our wonderful speakers, and let the folks know where they can get in touch with more of your content. We're going to go to Sheila, and then to Joey, Sean, and Tim. Sheila, where can folks get in touch with you, and what's the final word of wisdom you might leave with them?
Don't be afraid to try. That would be, because we did talk about failure, and we talked right now just about going over that hole. We don't know what chapter 5 looks like, so just keep moving forward. For now, you can find me on LinkedIn or Instagram as Sheila Slick. I am on chapter 4 of trying to recuperate my ex account. Yes, we learn from our mistakes. You can also find me on SheilaSlick.com.
Sheila, thank you. Joey, final word of wisdom, and where can folks get in touch with your content?
Yeah, I appreciate it, Dr. Heath. I'm on X at Idea World Base, Joey Ideas. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Advice, write about your curiosity, write about your problems, write about what your insecurities are. It'll change your life.
Beautifully said. Sean, my man, what do you think? Where can folks get in touch with you, and a final word of wisdom?
Guys, it's been great being with you this morning. You can get in touch with me in the DMs on X at the Sean McManus. Final word of wisdom: take more action. If you have an idea and you're thinking about moving towards something, start taking small action towards that thing. You don't have to move the whole mountain at one time, but at least start walking that direction.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Love that. And Tim, final word of wisdom: where can folks get in touch with you, my friend?
Yes, sir. People can get in touch with me at Simply Tim TV on X, or they can visit the website at confidentspeaking.us. And my final word of wisdom would be to focus on connecting more so than your eloquence, and communicating. And I heard you say that you didn't consider yourself to be a great speaker, Dr. Heath. But I always try to remind people that it isn't about your eloquence, it's about your effectiveness. And if you have the ability to connect with people, then the eloquence doesn't matter, because when people feel your heart, they feel your message and they connect to you. And that's what's most important. Because I know someone whose English was about as broken as it could be, but yet when she passed away, they put her name on a school, a brand new school in the county. So that's impact and effectiveness in her communication.
Wow, I love that. That is so beautiful. That is, I appreciate you sharing that story, and I appreciate all you guys. Yeah, I'm thinking about a guy that is probably one of the worst speakers I've ever heard. He repeats a lot of things. He stumbles around, stammers a lot. Not a well-spoken person at all, but a very intelligent person. Intelligence and verbal fluency are connected, but they're not absolute. And that speaker is Elon Musk. If you've ever listened to him, he really doesn't speak all that well, but he has something meaningful to say. And so that brings me back to your chapter 5. Instead of focusing, as Tim said, on eloquence, instead of thinking that you need to climb to the tip top of the mountain, like Sean talked about, and instead of thinking that you have to have every thought together and not make mistakes like Joey and Sheila talked about, do your writing and come up with something meaningful to say. Once you have a why, the how will take care of itself. Make your chapter 5 a good why, a why to do something, a why to say something. And I would hope that your why would be to lift somebody up, to serve somebody else. I want to say I really appreciate at this point, over 400 people that we have on all the social media platforms, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, in my Mindset Masterclass, and on X. Yes, indeed. We had a wonderful panel of speakers today. We will be back at the same time next Monday, as we always are, at 7 a.m. for Monday Mindset Mojo. If you have a story to tell, I would love to have you on the show. Send me a DM and we'll make the arrangements. I'm booking out for future episodes. I'll be back on Friday for a fast-paced Executive Espresso. It's a quick 18-minute interview. And as always, come over and join me in my Mindset Masterclass at school.com/mindset. That's SKOOL.com/mindset. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate your time. And Waylon says, need to get you on Rumble. Gosh, Rumble, my driveway is a bit of a rumble because it has a lot of potholes and I need to fix. But Rumble, I think you're right, Waylon. You need to educate me on that. Thank you for being here, my friend. Thank you, Kim. I really appreciate Michael, my good friend, dropping some things in the chat, as well as my dear buddy Bryce, wonderful Stoic philosopher in his own right, and Sarah, Joshua Altman, Gaetano at Nino's Digital Cafe. Wonderful to see you guys here. We had an early morning attendee, the Acadian Carpenter, and Colton Soroka. Colton, man, I got to get you on Monday Mindset Mojo, Colton. Great to see you here, my friend. Have a great day, guys, and we'll catch you next time. Bye-bye now.